Hello, this is Lisa Lee and welcome to my channel. We are doing a pick a card today in a sort of unconventional way because our format is very loose. We are entering this Sunday, like I'm in the energy of like right the night before, of the new moon in Capricorn. And so this is planting seeds, planning, thinking about things in a grounded, rational way. But it's a lot more than that. There's combustible energy and I don't know how much y'all can feel it. But I almost feel like this energy, I have to like wrestle it a little bit. So I have a couple of notes because it's very intense. But we have 3 different piles here, and each pile signifies either a different part of the story. It's not a pick a card in the traditional sense because I was shuffling before we started and I felt immediately that I was going to have to wrestle a bear with whatever the energy was. And so I'm kind of just like, this is a whitewater rafting reading where we just like are just trying to hold on to a moving horse. The bottom of the deck energy is prayer. I don't know if these are like each person has a particular pile or each pile signifies something. But I have it organized like a pick a card and I don't know why. So we're just going to go with the flow. But we are in tumultuous times. And the key question for this reading is, what is spirituality? What even is a psychic? What even is any of it, right? We're in such a beautiful energy to investigate and begin to investigate questions of identity. But more than that, questions of why do we even do this? Why are we even invested in the process of spiritual exploration? What is it about these relationships with the spirit realm that, can be tangibly relied upon? That's sort of part of what we're going to be looking at with these different piles. And the last part, the witches, the oracles, the visionaries, I could do a whole long list, but as soon as I went into this little trance, started to like touch the cards, felt like I was going to have to wrestle a bear, realized the bottom of the deck energy was prayer, understood that there probably was like a loose connection between all of the piles and that they're not like a traditional whatever. I was seeing like the archetypes of like the spiritual archetypes throughout time. So over here we have this question about like, well, what is spirituality anyway? And then we have the archetypes associated with spirituality, like how do we work with, incorporate, understand, and even see ourselves through the spectrum of what has been prophets, visionaries, oracles, witches. So I don't know, this is a very weird format. We're not going to think too much about it because part of the beauty of being in a trance is having a little bit less control. But I want you to take a couple of deep breaths. Just bring yourself into yourself. With every deep breath, expand yourself. And with every exhale, just release what is not yours, what you don't want to hold down onto. And so just take a moment and connect with your ascended ancestors, your ascended guides, your ascended gods and goddesses, those energies that are for your best and highest good. Say a little prayer and ask them which pile is meant for your focus. And if all of the piles feel like they're meant for your focus, let that be something that they reveal to you as well. I will put the timestamps below and I will see you in pile number 1. Okay, pile number 1. We have, when I picked this up to pull the piles together, I always see something when I feel the objects. I do have a psychic thing with feeling objects. And this was feeling like this had like a mirror ball. I felt like there's a mirror ball part of this. So like, who am I? What am I? Where do I belong? What does it mean to be me? Like there's something about, I almost hear the phrase fragmented sense of self is coming up. And so we're starting with the card, the Maiden. And this is with the prayer being the bottom of the deck energy and the mirror ball sort of being about finding some form of identity. Even when we think about like, this is a hard thing to explain, so I'm just going to try and get it. Again, this reading feels really unwieldy. But with the Maiden, I feel like there is a relationship we have, and I'm seeing an allegory. It's analogous. So the egregor that is the god of Christianity, for instance. What is an egregor? There's another word that I'm not getting exactly, but it starts with a T. There are ways in which we, at a collective conscious level, agree on certain stories, certain realities, we create containers for our faith that are like the concept of God. And then we worship, and the story, like reinforces this power, and we participate in it, and there's a lot that's there. And whoever's gone through a process of like deconstructing or getting to a death of God moment where, you know, my God, why have you forsaken me? That moment speaks very particularly to like the moment when like all of the stories that you were told turned out not to be true, and suddenly what you had been worshiping was not what you thought it was, and you had to start from ground zero of what do I believe? Like, what is the truth? What is the reality? Like, what were the experiences I had? What did they even mean? And so with the Maiden card, there's a phase in life that I associate with like heavy indoctrination around romantic love, especially when you think about the setup that like we all are neglected, more or less. We're all kind of orphans in a world where we like are subject to the structure that is economy instead of ecosystem. It's extractive. It leaves everyone hungry. It leaves everyone at a disadvantage. And so when you think about the promises that we're given that are meant to manipulate us into playing proper roles for whatever the machine is, one of the big indoctrinations that we face, probably one of the deepest indoctrinations we face, is one around romantic love. And we have the savior doctrine in religion, but we also have a savior doctrine, you know, when you find your person, like you will be freed. You know, when you have this experience, like it will translate into this kind of deliverance, salvation. And eventually we find sometimes that these stories end up not being true. And so that prayer here, you know, we're bringing ourselves back to that point where the substance of what we hope for, the substance of what we're looking for in the way of, you know, when we go to a religion and we're looking for the substance of the experience of a God that is real, that loves us, and we need some story to facilitate that, and it turns out to be false. And then we find ourselves knowing that we've had real experiences, real spiritual experiences, but not knowing how to make sense of any of it when the story fails. And the same can be true with the Nine of Pentacles. You know, this is a story of independence, being single almost, being established as an independent person on your own, in your own right, not in partnership. You know, the Maiden is indoctrinated at the level of, you know, this type of love will save you. This type of love is worthy of your life. Eight of Wands, you get a lot of messaging. But what is true with the Fool card and beginning again and the prayer here is that story does fail. And the reason why that story fails is because the structure is the problem. It's not that romantic love isn't real. It's not that it's not accessible, but the way that it actually works is different than what's on advertisement. And it actually starts, you know, true romantic love that you can rely on starts from a choice that's made at the level of a Nine of Pentacles position, and like you have arrived at I am my foundation. And from that point, now you can make a choice about what it is to like engage in building something with someone else. Like, it's a strange thing that we hear from our mothers and you know, everybody when we're growing up, like, you know, establish yourself first. But there's something here about all this messaging and the Nine of Pentacles where we're coming back around to this. Independence, you know, is another way of looking at it. But the Maiden also does fall in love. The Maiden also needs to have a kind of a codependent experience for a little while. Why? It's such a strange thing that I'm seeing here. We've got like a message that, I swear this energy is bizarre. It's kind of like I can feel the forces of nature like shifting under our feet. And all the structures that we've come to rely on, all the stories that we've been told about the things that we want aren't, you know, they're failing us in one way or another. But the message that's here with the Maiden that I think we want to take a hold of is the substance is still real. It's just time to wrap another story about it. So like the substance of the need for partnership, the need for companionship, the need for romantic love, the way in which we're meant to engage with Eros, the substance is not lost. The substance is eternal. But the stories around it with the Eight of Wands, the messaging around it, and where we find ourselves in a Nine of Pentacles position, which is the right starting point, but we need to begin again on something very fundamental. And so I'm trying to think about what, this is the information that's coming through, but how do I tie this to the theme? So part of this reading, I'm going to be like popping out of like a trance space just to kind I'm trying to like, I'm telling you, this is an energy I have to wrestle. How is this related to what I'm asking? We're in tumultuous times. This is why I wrote this down. It could not, for the life of me, the witches, the oracles, the visionaries, new moon in Capricorn in tumultuous times. Mirror ball. Who are you outside of all of these stories? So, okay, and now I'm seeing the connection. So the mirror ball is all of the stories that you're shown. And so it's almost like you guys are saying, like, you grew up in a time or in a circumstance, or what it is to encounter an awakening right now, what it is to be in this particular reckoning around the truth and the lies, is to recognize that, you know, you encountered a mirror ball of information about reality and who you are and what it means to be a person and where your place in the world is and how you operate with all of these feelings, like what the values and the priorities are. And that's, I see it shatter. I see it shatter. And so then our guides are saying, well, we want to pull you back into what is the love in your life? What is the love of your life if it's none of those things? And with this Nine of Pentacles, there's something powerful here. Patience, solitude, and peace. And hidden, and tiger's calm. Tumultuous times. Okay, now I'm seeing it. In some ways, this is super straightforward. A lot of you are looking around at the world and thinking, what does it even matter? You know, that all of the dreams can't come true, that the stories have failed, that the structures are collapsing, that it's, the prayer here is like, you know, around getting a grip. And so part of what it means for us to get a grip, and I think that the maiden speaks to our phase in development in this collective. I don't care how old we are. There's something about the maiden in this pile and like this us. It doesn't matter what gender, what, like, it doesn't, you're in a phase of, I always see Persephone at the line of the forest flirting with Hades. And that's also this moment of like not having had the real experience, but wanting it and not knowing what the stakes are and not knowing what the costs are and not knowing that you will be completely transformed by it. And so when it comes to the new roles that we will play, the mirror ball as it shatters and finding our way, the archetypes that we are going to incorporate, there's a big aspect of having to see our way forward. And without those frames, almost this is where prayer comes in. This is where calling them forward, calling them. So the value of the oracles, the, like I'm seeing the seers, like I'm seeing the holy and spiritual people of every ancient population that there is. You know, like I'm seeing the lineages, and every lineage, I'm seeing those that are the spiritual leaders, they step forward. And they all have different names, but they're the people that like bridge. And the people that bridge aren't particularly useful when everything is operating just fine. The people that bridge are the only people that can see the way forward. And they end up being the physical manifestation of like the lamplight, the lighthouse, the torch, you know, Hecate's torch. And so these pathfinders are not working from a place of, it's hard for me to see. It goes a little dark right here. We're going to pull some cards here with the solitude. They're working from a different place. The seers, the visionaries. And so when you think about like, well, what purpose do you have in the ecosystem? Where do you find yourself? And what does it mean to engage with a spirituality that is off the map? Because we're really tired of all the spirituality that we see on the map. Like, we're not doing that anymore. It can go F itself. Like, no thank you. That I don't want to wear that outfit. I don't want to have to speak to you through that costume because it's the only way that you'll understand what I am. Like, I want to embody what it is to be a spiritual person. Like, that's what I'm seeing here in terms of like, that's the stepping into the right direction. And so when we see this Nine of Pentacles, there is something about solitude and Nine of Pentacles that we have to examine in light of the Maiden and even the Virgin archetype. with these ancients here and peace. All right, let's go. With hidden and tiger's calm, I see a point in time that we find ourselves where we do have to prepare for major change that entails a lot of inside. And we did the inside with the pandemic. Every tragedy has two purposes, and this is really advanced spirituality, and we could do the like intense theorizing around like why it makes sense to me, at least because I'm jumping in because I can see this, and I, you know, there's a dual purpose to every tragedy. And so we see with the Fool card, and I love this deck because it's like, you know, the clown at the head of the room is what we're all afraid of. But there seems to be, like, behind the scenes, like, a lot more that's going on. And so when we think about hidden and tiger's calm, and we think about who you're meant to be in the world, what your place in the world is, some of you, because we're entering an era of instability, and we are in war times, some of you aren't really meant to be very big and like out front right now. There's some of you are meant to be a little bit hidden. Some of us are meant to be in a position where we sense the predator and we go calm, we go still, we just listen. And that's a phase and it's a place in life that is part of the tumultuous times. But in that tumultuous times where there will be inside time, because there's something about another reason to have to shut the door. And I don't get a clear picture, but I have this deck for that reason. Let me just pull a card. I'm going to be jumping around quite a bit with this force, like of a channel that I'm working with. It's the new moon energy. This new moon in Capricorn feels much. It is like a goat, but it feels like a giant, like impossible to manage goat energy. Saturn on fire almost. Peace in our time. Peaceful. Peace and resistance of all groups. Power and resistance of all groups. So that peace is kind of with the loopholes. There's some really cool stuff that's going on with Renaissance. But I do see with these loopholes, and I do see with the peace in our time, especially with the Five of Cups, that there is going to be a lot of change that could very easily sort of, I'm seeing the tide come back out and like grab you and bring you into the sea of emotions and you're overwhelmed. But there's something to be said for like the nature of resistance that is like looking at the predator, like being still, like picking up on like all the nuances and bringing in that tiger's calm, because like when there is a moment to pounce, if there should be, that's the right approach. So we're kind of just being brought to ground with that. But I'm losing the channel a little bit because I'm seeing too many things at once and I'm pulling myself back. When it comes to your calling in life, this is going to be the most romantic thing that there is. True romance is not with a person. It actually ends up being with archetypes, because we've talked about that before. There's the mundane, and the mundane sort of is a process of discovery. It's an insulation. It's where needs get met. It's nourishment. But those moments in our life that are like filled with inspiration, that call us out of ourselves and into new territory, that change us, that have us, you know, on these huge quests and explorations, are going to be a romance with an archetype. And so when we think about this period that we are stepping into and the ways in which we're interacting with, I see a crossing, a desolate landscape. We're building our way forward. We're coming up with the archetypes. And so when we go inside and we work with this inner world, and we think about what is calling us, what are the energies and what are the archetypes that are calling us into a different expression of self, this is this maiden phase. This is at the tree line. I see Persephone. She's in the meadow and the flowers, and she can see the tree line, and she can see Zeus. I don't know why I'm seeing Zeus, but I see Zeus. She can see Hades. I don't know why I'm seeing more than one. I'm actually seeing the gods in different forms. They're shape-shifting. But she's seeing them, and she's watching them. She's watching them move through this space, and she's very attracted to this, and she does not know that there's a trap in it, because it's powerful. It has like a musk, And for many of us, especially for the witches and those that are born with these certain kinds of abilities, there is this relationship with our shadow where there's like a musk, there's like a forbidden attraction, like the bad boy that is just like, there's the Persephone kind of a thing. And so when it comes to your calling, like there is always this moment where for the version of yourself that you are, Persephone, the maiden kind of a phase, for the maiden to transform into the next season, she first has to encounter like this forbidden, this dark forest of like, what is womanhood? What am I going to become? What happens? Like, what are the life and death cycles that I step into when I step out of the childhood and into the reality of a relationship? Think about like the reality of like a romantic relationship. We can go all the way back to the ancients to get a good picture on what this could look like. And you can cast any group of characters. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like the sexual attraction as it like awakens. You have like, you see like another like fuzzy human in the jungle, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden there's a spark, there's a feeling, there's like that nervous, like, oh my gosh, I have a crush. Like, oh, what is that? Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? And then you're like running away. Like there's some, you understand that like that maiden, that early like adolescent, like crushy, like it's like a panic and it's also an interest. Like the way that this sort of builds, like neither person really knows what they're getting into when it comes to that fruit of the forbidden tree, that act that can often produce storms of feelings, you know what I mean? The gods take over, or it can produce even like new life, birth that brings death sometimes. I saw a TikTok where someone was talking about how in certain cultures, or one culture, I forget what it is, but death is present at every birth. And if you guys know what that is, put it in the comments because I'm curious. The encounter with death and life and death cycles and seasons and the harshness of winters that there's not enough food, and this whole experience, like the maiden doesn't know it exists yet. And so she's flirting with love, but it's really like an encounter with like a type of predator. And so the calling is no different. When we have a calling, and we know that we are meant for a certain type of life or a certain type of expression or a certain type of experience, there is a danger there. And so we come back to this point with the hidden and the tiger's calm and peace in our time and loopholes. This group that I'm talking about, and two, you are going to be very much in a little bubble of safety throughout the tumultuous years that we're looking at, but you are also meant to, in some ways, stand independent and need to sort of be a light in the darkness in what that independence means. And that's not in the absence of love. It's just something that I'm seeing here with the prayer, the Nine of Pentacles, and the maiden. Because the maiden who does not end up entering a pact with Hades, I guess, like does end up in the tutelage of her mother. And so this Nine of Pentacles and this solitude is a different path. And it's for a time, I think that there's such a fear here as these structures crumble, that in order to have, like, like the institution of marriage is not looking so hot and heavy right now, for whatever reason, like things are just, I think for a lot of people, there's this fear that they will miss out on the quality of life that includes, the conscious evolution, in relationship and in reflection of a true lover. And the maiden and the Nine of Pentacles almost gets the best of both worlds, in respect to not needing that Faustian bargain, that necessitates a capture and a release. And some of us have already had that capture of release, and we're in this universal healing phase. And some of us are moving into a reality where you can have love without the capture and eventual release, without the negotiation, without having to give up half of your life in the way that Persephone has to do. And so the sun coming up here and the Leo and your position in this future that we're looking at, because we're attending to questions of who am I going to be? Well, you're going to be the archetype that is calling you into that quest, that journey, that story. You're going to figure out why this is what is refined in you, why this is the partnership of a lifetime. It's not choosing a career in the same way that it used to be. because we are all at the same starting point with new technology. So nobody is behind. Whatever education you have gotten to this point, no matter what career you have had to this point, we're at a drawing board. There's an Etch-a-Sketch, and everybody is a beginner. And from this, everybody is a beginner place, even though we are moving through a tumultuous time. Again, I see a bubble around you, hidden loophole. You're not in the line of fire for whatever reason, and it might be because we're talking to the visionaries, the seers. And it is going to be your call to see the way forward in one way or another, no matter where you find yourself sitting. And so this is a group that does shine. And this is a group that is spiritual. And when we ask ourselves the question of what is the practical reason for spirituality, it's when we cannot see any other way. People don't choose to become spiritual. It's not like they wake up one day and they're like, I'm going to believe some fantastical story about some nonsense that has nothing to do with the things that I see and experience. No. People become spiritual because in the absence of any other nourishment, you're eating the bark. And so one of the first things that I asked my guides when I was sort of in meditation about this stuff was, going forward, in the absence of all of these lies and these false roles, these false pictures of what a spiritual person is, the false picture of what a psychic is. We're having to squeeze the reality of our experiences through these tiny little tropes that are caricatures of what it is to express in this way. And in order to bring up those experiences with the gods, in order to resurrect our ancient archetypes that are built into our DNA, that is the natural flow of evolution. In order to do that work, what's calling you into the journey? What's calling you at the starting line of nobody knows who they are, nobody knows what they're going to be doing with their life? What is out there that's calling you forth? What idea? What hope? What vision? Who do you love and why? It tells you a lot about where you want to be, who you want to be. And it's not in the absence of yourself, because it's just where the journey starts. It's where the question is posed. Am I like that? Is that like me? I resonate with people that say those things and act that way and wear those things. And why? What does this mean in relationship to me? How does my unique expression come through this archetype? What does this archetype have to show me? What is this relationship? What am I embarking upon in the way of focus when it comes to where you're going to pick up your inspiration and how you're going to translate that into conversation and communication and mastery? What are you going to channel? Because you get to choose the nutrients that you eat. You want to choose people that are nutrient. You want to choose, you want to make some really big choices about your attention, because if your attention is everywhere, you're going to be kind of scattered. There's going to be static all the time. You're going to be misdirecting energy. You're going to get caught in loops of persuasion, or there's so many things that can happen. Yes, you want to be informed, and yes, you want to take action on that information to the extent that you can. I want people to be in prayer with the ascended ancestors, the ascended guides. I want you to be plugged in to what even prayer is, because when you can't see the way, when for whatever reason, when the lights go down, when the lines get cut, when we find ourselves in new territory of experience, then we need to get very keen on prayer, because that's the technology that our ancestors used, and that's why religion persists, and that's why religious technology, when we strip the stories away, the stories fail us, but the activity, the substance of what's on availability, the substance of what is available in that relationship where you are on your knees in one way or another, connecting with something that does move you. Those experiences are real, absent requiring some conviction about the story that introduces you to the concepts, that makes themselves known through the container that you have on offer. And when that container fails, that is when you have your first opportunity to truly encounter what a God is. And you only get there on your own. Nobody can tell you what's going to work for you. That's just the truth. What's going to work for you is going to work for you, because it's it just rings the right bell. It just settles as truth. It clicks in. It's a puzzle piece. So you're going to be called into transformation. And so if you are in any way shut down, or heart, chest fallen, or in, feeling some level of despair and hopelessness around looking at a landscape in front of you and being like, I don't know where I'm going to find like my strength, my love, my support. There's a healing here in whatever this communal solitude, whatever this hidden place ends up being. You are in the middle of a major transformation. And I want to look at that transformation a little bit. With diligence. So this is the Capricorn, new moon. This energy is about, this is why so I was like, when I sat down and I was like, Capricorn, new moon, why is this energy like something that I have to like wrestle and like grab hold of, and it's like flying and, all the dragon. It's like a very intense energy. And it's because like part of what it is to plan our way forward, in the situation that we find ourselves in and within our own personal development, is to understand that we're about to step on a whitewater raft. We're already in a whitewater rafting situation with the news that's coming out, with the energy, with having to think on our feet, with having to plan in these unprecedented situations, with not knowing where we're going to be, not knowing where security is. Like, this is a crazy energy that we find ourselves in. Whoo, storm. What we're being asked to do when we connect to our ascended ancestors, our ascended guides, when we connect to our ascended gods and goddesses, what the prayer ends up speaking to is you need to find a calm in this storm. We need to get a hold of what it means for you to feel connected to a universal healing. And this is something that actually develops and takes place. This relationship is forged in solitude, in the absence of other things. When you can't see your way forward, when you are afraid and it's dark, then we just pray. It's actually kind of natural. And so when you think about the technology of prayer, and when you think about this phase of life that we find ourselves in collectively as a maiden who's looking into the forest of what is life going to bring, that seems like a predator, but change is also like musky, like what's going on? does that scary predator like me? You know what I mean? And that's not the way we want to react to it, but that's not even really the way that we're looking at it, actually. I think I'm just trying to, pad the fact that like uncertainty in the future can be really scary, but it can be also really exciting when we think about the possibility of how change, is opportunity, how these encounters do transform us. And so we're called into this place of like stillness to transform. And when we think about, well, where am I going to go? Who am I going to be? What is my spiritual thing for? Well, it's for you to see. It's to help you see. It's to help you connect to those currents of inspiration, those currents of peace, those currents of hope, like whatever you're going to need. If it's not available to you because of the environment, if you are literally in the darkness of night and there's no electricity and you find yourself, in the middle of the desert and you have to pick a direction, there's something about this time and this place and this transformation that is the reason we have a spiritual walk, the reason why we even have seers and oracles and wizened ones, is because we do feel lost. We do need to actually go within to find our way out. We do need to move by resonance. Is this person telling me the truth or a lie? Well, does it resonate? No, I don't care what they're saying. I'm going by vibes. And so like this is sort of a call into understanding that there's the romance with the archetypes that we want to incorporate into our lives. That's also sort of positioning ourselves eternally in roles. What do I want to be as an eternal divine self? What role do I want to have? Are you an engineer? Six of Swords. Where do I want to go? What am I cultivating in this inner world? What is calling me forth? It's a new kind of romance with your own potential. And your old potential, your own potential takes many forms, but your old potential was very much informed by drives, status, all the stuff. And this is different. And so this diligence is a devotion in part. I was saying to someone this week, and I think this is great advice, I'm going to say it a couple of times. We go before the gods with as our inner children. We don't go to them with agendas and expectations and exchange. what gets ministered to and and how we grow spiritually, the way that we grow spiritually, the way that we gain power and giftedness in the different aspects, is we go to the gods as our inner children, and we don't go to them saying, I'm the best and you should love me because look at my wonderful self. We go to them and we say, I'm scared, I don't know the way. I'm praying because this is it's my instinct to do so. I don't know what else I'm doing. Who are you? Make yourself known to me. Please guide me. Those things that are ascended, those things that are good, those things that are for my best and highest. We pray. And there's so many ways to do that, because this change that is coming, the Six of Swords, there's movement. There's major movement out of chaos and into calm, into new waters, into a new location. There's major change here. And so there's this ancient influence and this transformation and this offer that is here for you. And what is on offer is when you're scared and you're sort of looking out over the future and you're thinking, I don't know who I'm going to be. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. I don't know what my role is. You're meant to have a commitment to your light, nourishing like yourself like that. Like I feel very strongly that there's like this trite aspect to that, advice. But the Knight of Cups is an offer of love. You're being told peace in our time. There's a loophole here. Yes, there's wars going on. Yes, it's unstable. But you can be at peace. Peace. We have peace twice. We have calm, peace, calm, hidden, new beginning, Wheel of Fortune, Six of Swords. But this is you, Nine of Pentacles. Like this is an independent thing. Now, does that mean that you're going to have to break up with your people, that you're not going to be around anybody? But no. Like this is like, it doesn't matter if you have a family of people around you or if you're, full of, like a huge community that you work with. Like this Nine of Pentacles is standing on a foundation of your own truth and operating from that place. And your confidence comes in this place, not from other people, but from your connection to the divine through prayer. It's not about running to something for salvation. It's not about the salvation doctrine of a religion that failed you. It's not about the salvation doctrine of a love that failed you. This is a relationship to what is emerging within this transformation. And all of the static, all of the messaging, you tune that out, not because you don't help, not because you don't stay involved. You're very selective about where your attention goes. And when you decide, I want to see my way forward, I want to connect to the divine, I want to nourish myself, I want to be in the tiger's calm of this hidden place that I find myself in the peace and the solitude that I am, for whatever reason, a part of with this universal healing. There is a change, the Fool, the Wheel of Fortune, but there's some love on offer. It's a positive change. It's a positive transformation. Be diligent in cultivating your inner space and connecting with the archetypes that are calling you and working with what it means to apprentice under those forms and thinking about what it means to become, one with a form. Like it's not what is your job, what are you going to be when you grow up? You're an eternal being. What is your eternal form? What are the relationships you want to have? Is it a part of nature? Are you wanting to work with what it means to become the river? Is it possible that you want to work with what it means to, there's so many options, and there's new things too. And there's ways in which you can be inspired and co-create and create new things. And so that strategy here that we're seeing is kind of looking at our landscape and saying okay, it looks like everything's falling down. And everything that I've built up until now seems really unstable. It seems like a lot of house built on sand situations. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know who I'm going to be. But I know that the landscape is changing. I know that the technology is changing. And I know that whatever net is created is in relationship to the strategy that I am making right now around self-cultivation, but also connection. And what it means to stand on the foundation of my own truth. Standing on the foundation of your own truth is cultivating that truth. Being careful about what resonates and does not resonate and bringing that into some sort of a, container where you can then bring your hope and your faith and your connection to whatever is divine. This is a torch. The utility of your spirituality is as a torch. You see your way forward when you can't see another way, when there isn't another option. It's been that way for hundreds of thousands of years. It's why it persists. So the harsh truth that we have to face here with independence. Man, this is an interesting pile. We've got independence twice. It says independence. Nine of Pentacles is independence. Solitude is independence. Let's see why this is coming up under the mantle of harsh truth. And then we're going to move to the next pile because I don't want to take too much time here. We're okay. Real quick, let's see, why is this hard truth? Whenever the tower starts falling and we're like, oh my gosh, you know, like, how am I supposed to evaluate myself, and how am I supposed to evaluate life when there's, and love when there's no Five of Cups, this grief, like what I had hoped for, what I was invested in, when I thought, the dream that I thought was going to come true. When that's no longer available, then you have to, like, what happens when the dream fails? Then we don't know. Then that dream is a compass. That dream is a map. When that dream fails and we don't have that compass and we don't have that map, it's not cause to give up or collapse within. It's not cause to think that there aren't any options. Part of the strategy is saying, yeah, everybody is at the starting line on what we're going to become as a humanity. And so the harsh truth with the independence is, you know, there is something here about our independence that we find it hard to face. Because diligence says we have to keep on going. We have to keep on pushing. Even if you're doing this independently, even if you think that there should be more support, part of what it is to be a seer, part of what it is to be an oracle, part of what it is to be a magician is to, in the absence of all else, now we break through. We do this because the hunger inside of you, it's like it has to be, it's need-based. How do we become who we are? It's related to our needs. And so this need that is unmet is calling us into a relationship with spirit to meet those needs, because guess what? There is not another option. That's kind of the harsh truth. And we can be frustrated and we can hate that and we can think that's the worst thing in the entire world. This is the worst thing in the entire world. Or we can find ourselves where we are and we can say, okay, well, what does this mean? What is the healing here? What is the generosity in the place that I find myself? What is the gift on offer in this new beginning, despite the fact that it necessitates some sort of solitude? It seems like the utility of the solitude is to connect you to the divine, because there is no other choice. And when we're connected to the divine because there is no other choice, then what do we find? Well, we find vision. We find inspiration. We find what seekers and prophets and high priestesses and every other spiritual archetype has ever found, which is a light in a darkness. It's an experience of channeling that brings us through from one place into another and then moving forward. And so that generosity of what's on offer in this place of independence, the maiden speaks of a romance that, not a romance that is thrown away, not a romance that isn't experienced, but it's a different kind of romance. And I'm being shown an ancestor who said, if the romance for you, when you were a kid, if you were not indoctrinated to a romance says that you submitting to someone else equals a happy life, or two people submitting to each other equals a happy life. If we didn't have that story, and instead the romance that you were given in terms of what it is to fall in love with life is, you have a life in front of you. It is a quest. You have circumstances that will introduce themselves as story structures that you have to bring truth and holiness through. You can play any character you want. You can take any archetype with you on this journey, and you can embody those archetypes whenever you need, and you can learn what it is to be in communion and developing those aspects of self. That is the love story. You know, if you were given a different kind of love story, would you be chest-fallen? Would you be broken up about what you are leaving behind? Because that inner nature is answering to something old with the ancients here. And the only way for you to open that ear or open your heart or somehow embody what it is that is calling you is to step into this solitude, is to establish yourself in truth. And the high priestess in the ancient times, the Vestal Virgin was not abstinent or, you know, without, like, I guess at a certain point, like historically it did get, but like for, you know, I see the visions of they weren't without partnership, but they held so much power that they had to stand on their own because they could not give that power away, or they couldn't be trusted with it. And so part of that initiation of what it meant to be a high priestess was to disavow romantic love as the idol that you serve, because that is a submitting your power to another. And if that wasn't the indoctrination, would the romantic relationship that you had with life be about romance with your potential and your power and what you can be as an aspect of nature. And so we're meant to just like, throw away the old stuff and step into a new kind of maidenhood, a new sort of flirtation with what life can be, to stand on that foundation of truth that comes to us through solitude, comes through us through the healing of connecting with the ancients, connecting through prayer, and the transformation that takes place, in the face of a hard truth that says, the harsh truth is things are falling apart, but the opportunity, the gift, the generosity is that this is an opportunity for you to encounter your true nature. And so make a commitment, to a new type of love story that is not an absence of what you had before, but almost makes it a little bit irrelevant because of what is becoming. And there is strategy here in these tumultuous times to not collapse under the weight of whatever you might find yourself dealing with by way of loneliness or even isolation, but to think about this as part of what, when we think about the nun, there's a solitude that goes with every spiritual practice. We can go to all of the archetypes. What did the prophets do? They go into the desert by themselves for a while. 40 days doesn't seem like a long time considering what we've all been through, right? But there's, and I don't mean to make light of that, but lifespans were shorter, whatever. There's a lot there for you to investigate in terms of a romance with life that is part of the strategy of what it is to pull in the calm, anchor yourself in life. Is sometimes about accessing prayer and connecting with the substance of what nutrients your ancestors had on hand when they found themselves in the middle of a wilderness and they had to pick a direction, and there could have been predators anywhere, and they had to go with something, and so they turned to the guy or the wise one or the woman and said, you pray, what do you feel? And then they took that path, and for better or worse, they entered a story that was calling them. And so I want you to think about that. That's basically, we're going to leave that there. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you again soon. Okay, pile number 2. We have, so this energy with the underworld, actually, in particular, is interesting. Because the underworld is like, when pigs fly in the underworld, it's like miracles of the underworld. And so I want to say that when it comes to sort of where we find ourselves in terms of planting seeds and being practical and moving forward, and just like the time and the place, like there is this like end of the world feeling. And there's also, there's two things that I'm seeing. One, the underworld is kind of like a place of despair. It's a place of hopelessness. It's a place of feeling like lost and abandoned. And it doesn't have to be, but there are just regions of the underworld that are like that. And so it's kind of what I'm feeling here with this card. And with when pigs fly, like I think that, like I actually am connecting with a part of the underworld that I sometimes find when I need to help an energy crossover. And I kind of retired from that a little bit just because unless Hecate puts something before me, like I'm just not, it's too much, it's a lot. It's like really a job. But the underworld here, like there are aspects of the underworld where you find energies or people, it doesn't matter whether they're dead or alive, that have for all intents and purposes just given up on any hope that they aren't abandoned. Given up on any hope that there is anything out there that could actually like satisfy or be real, or not just be like a gimmick, or not just be like I'm seeing someone take a hit of acid and like, oh my gosh, I saw, the face of God. It was so real and amazing. And then like I see like the cut to the next scene and they're, bagging groceries and wanting to just like, this is miserable. Like how is this right? How is there a presence of anything that I experience that like actually transfers to like helping me with my day-to-day life when there's so much despair, anguish, etc. And so when we look at this underworld card, especially when it comes to like the archetype of the oracle, the archetype of the high priestess, the archetype of the witch, the archetype of somebody who is in that category of you're attracted to like the shaman, like you have that DNA, you have that giftedness, it calls you in. What is that moment when it doesn't seem to matter? There's no real position for these energies. And if there are, it's crazy town. And what are you even teaching from where when there's no structures about organized religions or the temple systems, or we don't know what it is to actually connect with the stuff that, for so long our bodies have been conquered. And so that connection to that sentience, that those lineages of wisdom, like it almost feels like there's this feeling of dead end, right? And so I want to look at that. That's kind of where we're opening here, because our bottom of the deck energy is prayer. And prayer is a invitation. The gods call us in, the ascended ancestors call us into prayer. Pile number one had like almost like a good definition for it. Like what is the necessity of prayer, and what is prayer? Is it real? Is it not real? Like, we have to stop asking, is it real or is it not real, Western mind? You know what I mean? Like, we can't just be like all caught up in like the Western mind, like, put it in that box, and, you know what I mean? We're not doing that. So what we are doing is we're gonna stop asking, like, what's the exchange? What's this gonna do for me? Like, what does it like? And we're gonna think about the fact that something like prayer that persists, and that we experience, like, even in our greatest disbelief, at moments when we just cannot figure out what to do, when we don't know where to go. It's something that just kind of like snaps in when we're terrified. If you've ever encountered like a spooky feeling in the night, or like woken up in like the fever of a nightmare that like grips your entire body, like, we just pray. And that utility, like, that our ancestors, like, this came from that utility that our ancestors would begin to rely on this. They would rely on prayer as they were walking into battle because it steadied them. And they didn't know why, but somehow this worked. The technology, brought relief and release and inspiration and strength when there was no strength. When they were hungry and they couldn't step another step, and they prayed and they got that extra step, like, and my finger just did that. The destroyer, when they were face to face with a predator, it's almost like an encounter with the destroyer is an encounter with prayer at the same time. And there was an image that came through of someone was talking about in pile number one. I saw a TikTok, and if anybody knows where this came from, please drop a comment, who was saying that, there's a tradition where death is always present at the birth, and that the people in the room honor death and know that death is always present at the birth, and that death is a type of mother, right? And so prayer seems to be born at the exact instant that we encounter levels of whatever it is to like, the presence of the destroyer is also the presence of prayer. It's a call to pray, and it necessitates it. And we may not want to deal with that, but when we find ourselves in the underworld with grief, when we find ourselves not knowing the direction that we need to go. When pigs fly, though, it's like, there's almost like this relationship to the destroyer with pigs fly over the underworld that is like, there is no miracle here. The destroyer has already won. And with the Six of Wands, we're flipping that script. Because the Six of Wands is a victory after a very long battle. And the Strength card here with the Page of Swords, the Emperor, the Lovers, and the Queen of Wands with the Four of Pentacles. And bottom of the deck energy, we have a Two of Pentacles. What is not balanced? What is not balanced is a position of certainty around nothing will ever get better. There is no hope. The indictment is cast. The list of wrongs, has been assembled. That is this moment, right? And so the Two of Pentacles says, that certainty, that seat of there is no hope. I want to draw for you a picture of parallels, or not even, it's a picture of opposites, and I want to sort of bring them into parallel somehow. They're like, I want you to picture the love and light person who is like, you see this person, and they are like checked out, and everything's gonna be great. It doesn't matter who needs rent, who needs food. I just, I subsist on, colloidal silver. You know what I mean? Like, just like insisting on an optimism that is just ridiculous, and it has nothing to do with like the way that like shadow and light together creates the forms that then we like inform our vision, right? Like that doesn't take into account like, the nature of it. But that position of everything is going to be great and it's going to be fantastic and it's going to be fine is just as irrational, equally irrational as a position of total and complete. There is no hope. There's nothing that can redeem this. There's nothing that can redeem me. There's no deliverance, in the underworld. That relinquishment to abandonment that we're seeing with a disbelief, like, what is the utility of a belief that doesn't give us what we expect it to? Well, what's the story? If the story didn't come true, then what did that tell you about the story? That the story failed. What about the experiences? Well, the experiences, well, what do they mean without the story? Well, the experiences without the story tell you it's a clue. And what it is to develop a relationship with the divine is to begin to encounter that seeking, that question. But first you have to believe that there is a question that can be answered. That it's not a foreclosed conclusion, that there's nothing and there's no hope. Because that certainty is just as much an error of judgment as some certainty around everything's wonderful, that, you know, God's going to come and sweep us up and, you know, whatever that is, you know. And so with the Six of Wands and this Emperor taking dominion over whatever the circumstance is, in large part, it starts with getting balance around this position. You know, you want to find Two of Pentacles. You want to find some balance here. This is unbalanced. There's no hope. You know, there is hope. And the Destroyer and the Prayer says, but the hope is in some form of prayer. And that has been what our ancestors have done from the beginning, and why every single people has a spiritual persuasion, and they interact with it, and they play with it, and they ask it questions, and they get responses, and they make stories out of it. And those stories inform our understanding of everything that we are. Basic, you know, like when we go back to the very beginning, and we have people trying to understand what God was. Well, anger, they would see it in themselves and others, and it would move around. It was a turn on. It was a God. It was something, but they didn't know what it was until they put it in stories. And then when it was in stories, they were able to say, "Oh, this is how it behaves in those circumstances." And now we have a whole school of psychology based on what we started to observe in that way. So there's like an evolution of thought and an evolution of development around what it means to leave that question open for yourself as well. And so, and because that foreclosed position, you begin to rot. You know, that foreclosed position is where you're not taking part in the substance of life and what life has to offer. You're not taking part in growth and expansion, because something about an encounter with a Destroyer has put you on your knees. And from that place, we're seeking balance, and that's okay. That's what we want. We want victory over. We want to take dominion over our life and have victory over whatever this position is, and we can have it. It's here. We see it. But the strength that is going to be required, the taming of whatever this is, does in part necessitate, you know, connecting with others, not withdrawing. And I know that can be like almost opposite advice that you might expect, because, you know, pile number one had a call to solitude, to really connect with the substance of the genes that they have inherited in the area of giftedness, connected to that archetype of the prophet, the shaman. We all have different, you know, lineages that way. And that necessitated a solitude. That's how you unlock those things. That's how they begin to discover them. But this is a little bit different. You're almost praying for deliverance at the level of connection. And the message here with the Queen of Wands is related to your passion. And with the Four of Pentacles, we have a call to sort of hold on to what's going on. Like, you got to hold on, right? You hold on. The Four of Pentacles and the Emperor, are interesting. It's an interesting juxtaposition, because the Four of Pentacles is like the fake Emperor, the little tyrant, the toddler, who for whatever reason has, like, they're holding on tight to every little scrap of power, and they have to monitor every little thing. And then they are embodying the tyrant in some ways, because they're scared, because their motivator is fear. And because they don't feel like there's ever enough, and they don't ever feel like they're safe. And so that necessitates holding on too tight and not making any progress. And so the Emperor is kind of the opposite of that. The Emperor actually does have authority, does have that place of dominion over life, does not feel out of control, is not motivated by fear. That's essentially going to be a victory no matter what circumstances you are facing. And so if your position is foregone conclusion, everything sucks, it's all bad, no good, like it's the end, the answer is that certainty and that conviction is tyrannical and motivated by fear, but we're going to move into something else. When a message is really strong for me, like my throat chakra really acts up, and this is one of those messages, because I have a feeling that you're kind of facing off with some destroyer in one way or another, or you've had to face off with some destroyer in one way or another, and that has kind of like crash landed your faith. Faith is a funny thing. It's a shape-shifting form that we inform. It's real and it's tangible, but it not without your participation, and not just any participation, creative participation. And so when we think about what we're looking at for you in the way of a need for prayer, let's get some cards. Because there is like a little bit of hope here. You know, I can see it. There is something that is reaching back from that place of prayer that you're meant to encounter. And that's, you know, it's like everybody hates the spiritual trope or message that says like, well, you're going through this for a reason. I want to change the way you think about that sentence. Either you're going to sit here and die and there's no reason to go through what you're going to go through or going through. And you're just going to, you know, this is at the end. Well, you know, that's rotting, you know. Or you're going to say, all right, there's something here for me to learn and transform through. And I'm going to grasp whatever hope there is in believing that there's a purpose in it. It's a choice. And it's a choice that's made because it's the better choice, right? And so sometimes when we think about spirituality and what spirituality is often an exercise of accessing the better choice. And so let's take a look and see what our guides want to say. And my throat chakra, like I guess you have a hard time speaking right now. Since I kind of go into the body of the space of the message and I am a physical medium, there's something cool about it. I can kind of dislodge those occasionally at an energetic level. But it is hard to speak. And so Page of Swords is about a message. There's something that you have to speak here that's hard to speak. And so it's like, you know, this grip of fear on you around like what's hard to speak. It's like a grip of fear. You have to tame something and you have to tame something through connection and then be able to like, so tame something through connection can be a number of things. This might be, you can't do this alone. You know, you can't tame this thing alone. And there's some way in which you're called to be brave. You're called to come out of your comfort zone in whatever this process of taming this story of your life, circumstances, situation, being able to look at the destroyer in the face and pray and say, what is the answer? What is the inspiration? How am I going to get a hold of whatever this miracle pigs fly? Like, because the presence of the pigs fly with the underworld means that it does seem like you're in the crosshairs here, but you need balance at the level of your belief system, at the level of how you choose to participate with the story. That's going to be the Strength card. Strength card is taming a lion. You're in the jungle. You see the destroyer. Holy shit. Whew, you know what I mean? Like, this doesn't feel good. I'm not enjoying this moment. Like, somebody else. Nope, this is just me. I have to face this. I have to face this. You know, we're in a moment in time where the change that we're called into, you have to face this. So whatever that you have to face this ends up being, it is giving you an opportunity for growth here around the way that you bring through your truth. And the presence of the Queen of Wands says you're going to have to be brave about it. She's a warrior queen. That means that she's not apologizing. She's speaking from a place of strength. She is triumphant. She's a glow up, walking glow up. That's kind of her energy. And she's a walking glow up that is never compromised at that level of confidence and beauty and radiance, because she won whatever that war was and whatever those wars were. And so you're going to bring whatever you know that it means to overcome into what it is to take dominion over this story and have victory over it through, you're going to have to work with this. I'm going to see what that is. Because the messaging is interesting. All right, let me get some cards. Oh, yes. That's... yeah. Wow. Five of Wands says that there's a conflict. Four of Swords says you need to heal. There's some action being taken. I'm trying to understand why our guides want to bring this in. I want to kind of check in with them. I want to pull back. Five of Wands, there's a conflict. There's a competition. There's a call to confront the destroyer. Knight of Swords, there's action being taken. Well, you have to take action. Part of what it is to have a spiritual practice, the utility of it, you know, is we're going to look at these tumultuous times we're in them. calls to change. It's not clear where we're going. You're tapping into the part of you that prays, because that's what this moment is all about. That's what this technology is here for. What it brings you, is a way of coping with this Three of Swords situation. And there is almost like, what's the other option? You have to heal. You cannot stay in a place of grief that doesn't allow you to overcome whatever this I feel like it's a finger pointing. Because I see the prayer, but it's like, all right, let me just pause. I want to just see something. You're called to be spiritual right now. Like, there's no other way. Like, I can't see it another way. Because I'm like, well, what's the role of the witch? The oracle. I was thinking about the archetypes and the identity of and the reason why we have spiritual anything. And I see that the group I'm talking to, like, I almost feel like I'm like at a football game, and I feel like I'm a coach, and I'm like, listen, kids, we got to get out there. We're gonna have to play this game. We have no choice about it. There's something here, that needs to be faced, and we're gonna and there's a prayer and there's a miracle. That's what we're in that moment. We're in the moment of prayer and miracle. Whatever you believe, grab on. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, we got to hope. We have to keep on going. We have to move with this. We have to face this conflict. We need to do so in a way that facilitates our healing with Four of Swords. We can't just go to battle. We also have to really mind our health. And so when we think about taking control and this balance, the action that needs to be taken in order to achieve balance with this foreclosed conclusion of some sort of devastation and abandonment, this encounter with the destroyer, is we have to start to pray. Because part of what it is to experience spirituality that works for you is to begin to engage with it at the level of, well, I have no other choice. There is no other thing. I don't know what's going to be revealed to me when I find myself in this position where I have to answer somehow with the Queen of Wands and the Page of Swords. And you start with, I am heartbroken. You do not go to the gods as with a plan and an agenda, and this is what we're going to do. When you enter prayer, when you are talking to the ascended ancestors and the ascended guides and the version of yourself that is infinite, that has lived all of your lives, when you're talking to the ascended gods and goddesses, these energies of nature, the sentience and the consciousness that predates your sentience and your consciousness, and therefore you are not it, you do not define it. The way that we enter, the way that we get to that place of being able to receive true nutrients from those mother trees is we don't go with like, I'm awesome, I'm great, We go with, I'm so sad. I'm so lost. I feel abandoned. I feel lost. I don't think that there's hope. In my own abilities, I cannot find it. I have no choice but to pray right now. And that's like the victory with what it is to break through at this level. Because the Knight of Cups is an offer of love. And so the victory is not going to the divine and having an exchange. I'm going to give you this, you're going to give me that. I'm going to be this incredible person and you're going to respond to me like that. I am being the goodest girl and goodest boy and I'm the goodest of ones. I am the goodest of ones. I am the specialist of goodest of bests. That is not how we go before the gods. We the only way they respond to us is when we bring our inner child to that place of please be with me, I'm scared. That is the only time that we're going to have that kind of exchange where we feel picked up and we have the experience of that Knight of Cups. Yes, this is too big for you. But the forces of nature that are nature have brought you into this place of reception, into this place of feeling the difference between... It's so hard with that Five of Wands, like I get it. You have to tame a lion. What does that mean? That means you're going to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to connect with something higher than you. You pick. It doesn't matter. The story's not that important. The belief hinges on the experience being real to you. The placebo pill works. It brings healing, but only if you have an ability to believe that that story about the medicine works. So the story doesn't matter that much because we're talking about forces of nature that are beyond language. whatever's going to work. You're going to forge that relationship. You're going to be called out of that comfort zone. There is an offer of love in it. And that Ace of Cups is that there is an experience, an opportunity in this breakthrough where we start with, I am so heartbroken. Nothing that I did worked out and I'm devastated. And we move into, this thing is too big for me and I can't handle it, and I'm going to have to leave my comfort zone in order to take a hold of it and somehow tame it so that I can continue to live my life. There's an offer of love in that process. You discover that offer of love in the process. Miraculous events, encounters with the gods, those are not events. Those are processes. And it's important to know that, because we keep looking for the event, but it's really the process where the relationship is built. And so you begin to build this relationship, and what is on offer for you in that relationship with the Ace of Cups, that is what gives you the power to be victorious in your messaging. Right there. That's it. Believe it or not, the proof is in the pudding. Put it into practice. You don't have to believe me, but you should. Because with the High Priestess and the Chariot here being around, you know, the Four of Pentacles is holding on tight to like the old way of seeing things. This is what we're going to do, strategy, blah, blah, blah. And I need water. Oof. Water. Maybe there's like really intense fears that have to be faced here, that you can't do it alone, that you have to call on the power of something that is beyond you in the form of prayer, that is a miracle in the way of the pig's fly. The fight that you're facing at the level of like your well-being necessitates that you really tap into that. And when there is no choice, that's sort of the calling on your life, you know, that because there is no choice. How do you deal with that? You know, when you talk to somebody who's gone through unspeakable tragedy, you say, how did you deal with that? That I had no choice. Is God real? I had no choice. You know, well, what happened? Well, I believed because I had no choice. Then what happened? Well, then I had this experience and it gave me information about myself. And then I felt cared for. And then I did it again and I had that experience again. And so, you know, that sounds like such a proselytizing message, but I'm not really advocating for any one God, you know, and what the ancestors and the guides are basically saying is like, you know, when you're facing the destroyer, pray. That is how we begin to show you who we truly are. Not when your best behavior should equal the best behavior, or bestest thing. That's a very different model. That's where we get devastated. Where's my rewards? What good are these rewards? Where's my place and my purpose? I did all these things and I still don't know where I'm going. Go before the divine in prayer with your inner child. Now try that. See what happens. The prophets are, you know, pretty good. Jesus even said this. Come before me as children or something. So with the High Priestess and the Chariot being about moving toward a spiritual place, you know, like, oh, what's good is my spirituality. There's a utility to it, nature, you know, there's a reason. So this movement, you're being taken towards something here. It might be like a phase in your life where you are embodying an entirely new archetype by necessity, or you have a confrontation with what you thought that was, and then what it actually ends up being. You know, no matter what the journey is here, what we're looking at with the destroyer is that you face the destroyer, whatever this moment of reckoning is, with an anticipation of a miracle, because there's something about that brings balance. There's something about opening the question of where this is going to go. Is there an opportunity to really meet this force of love, divine love? The Ace of Cups is an offer of divine love. Meet this force of divine love that then gives you this that brings in that message here with the Page of Swords and the Queen of Wands. I feel like the people who follow this channel, I really encourage you to learn what the meanings of the cards are, because whole half of the message ends up being the interaction between the archetypal meanings and how the message comes through them. And the same goes for the way that you incorporate different messaging, different archetypes into your life. You connect with the divine. You need some frame in order to bring things through, you know? And so this process of self-discovery in prayer, you know, as you try to tame whatever this is a lot, you know, whatever these messages are, the contemplative stream, threshold of destiny, my body, my home, self-compassion, vessel of light, community sculptor, the divine artist, purity of awareness, season of rest. Four of Swords. Step out of the fight. You're in some fight to the finish here. You're looking at the destroyer and you're picking up weapons. You're not going to beat the destroyer that way. You beat the destroyer by stepping into this contemplative stream. That's the exact same thing prayer ends up being. It's a willingness to open yourself to information and care, and it's a softening of your energy. When I was dealing with some really hard things at one point, like I found myself kind of like with a bullseye on my face at one point, and I had a guide that was with me that used to always say, soften your eyes, be soft behind your eyes. Like that was like, this guide would say that, and I would do it, and like I kind of listened, and it put me into a place where I like suddenly went like, I wasn't just in this reaction. I wasn't just operating from a place of fear. I was like self-aware, and in softening my eyes, I was like giving my faith to whatever was helping inform how I presented myself, right? And so when we get into that contemplative stream, it's because we're listening, we're open. And so that threshold of destiny says, this is an opportunity for you to discover an entirely new arena of your body, your home, your experience, and even if what you're dealing with is some form of despair, I think we don't have a choice. Have self-compassion about the position that you find yourself in. Being a vessel of light, again, like there's this is almost like a story of of a new version of you, inspired by this new type of growth. You're not getting in a fight. That's not how it's done. You're actually going to a pose of rest. And from that pose of rest, you then have victory over the experience, over the circumstances. You're able to then begin to think about what it is to encounter this as not something that's going to eat you and destroy you, but something that you have to tame. You have to get to a place of greater maturity. There's an offer of love for yourself in the process of discovery. And that discovery leads to a relationship with the divine that is infused with a deep love that fuels the message and the victory that you're meant to have. And it means letting go and moving away from this tyrannical, I have to have a hold on it, I have to decide, I have to be in charge, I have to fight. Let go of that and move into this place of reception with the high priestess. And that's how you get some balance for you. And so the answer is, this is for balance. Why are we praying for balance? Because it's not balanced. If it's only terrible. There has to be an opportunity for hope in order for us to begin to move into that possibility. Purity of awareness. I am present. My senses are a gift that ground me in the moment. I notice the beauty around me and pay attention to the small details of my life. I am mindful. Mindfulness and prayer are very similar. I mean, it depends on where you're coming from, sentience or consciousness, but either one, you pick the one that makes more sense to you. You pick the one that is more nutrients. Another thing about facing the destroyer, facing a horrible moment in time, is also understanding that the mundane is like an insulation. The mundane is like the arms of the mother. And no matter what you are dealing with, even if you find yourself like facing the most horrible thing in the entire world, the mundane experiences are always sort of tolerable. And again, going back to people who have endured the most impossible atrocities, when you ask them about it, how did you get through it? Well, I had to. Well, what did that I had to look like? Well, I paid attention to the plant, and I focused in on the garden, and I had a really good conversation, with my grandmother, and that's mundane. I did the dishes. The mundane gives the gifts of nutrients, it gives the insulation. When the electricity goes out and you're just, cuddling, in a sleeping bag, that experience like insulates the discomfort of, you have to deal with it, but at least we're gonna, laugh, and we're gonna have some hot cocoa, and we're gonna make it work. That mundane moment to moment is where the richness of support comes in, even at the most basic level, even when you're by yourself. The warmth of the blanket, the taste of the cookie, the joke that made you laugh. We start focusing on those things. That's connection to what can hold us. That's spiritual, that's prayer. So I invite you into that pile number 2, that is our answer to the question of, you know, what are the seeds that are planting hope? What is the tactical, practical plan of planting hope? We pray. Where is my hope coming from? I'm going to the divine, you know, from the place of need. And what is on offer is this entire transformation. And so I'm actually just called to get one more card. The seeds of change. Look at our bottom of the deck over here is the seeds of change. So there's change here in this process. And the reason that we have spirituality is because sometimes we have no other choice. We're facing the destroyer. And that's why, you know, and the simplicity of it is that sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Sometimes that prayer is just useful. And it does bring illumination. And there is leadership, you know, in that process. So you're led. That way you can be led. So there we go. Pile number 2. I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was helpful. And I will see you again next week. Okay, pile number 3. The ring. So we're thinking, you know, that we're thinking about this new moon. This is the first pile that it feels really calm. Pile number 1 was like whitewater rafting. Pile number 2 was, you know, like facing facts, you know, and pile number 3 seems to be like really calm. So let's take a look and see. Where's the, here it is. So this is this energy is kind of like ancient wisdom, the wisdom of the trees. I see druids when I was touching it before. And so the ring here, you know, part of the question that we came to this reading with was going forward, planting seeds, like, what is the plan? We're in tumultuous times. What is the purpose of spirituality in tumultuous times? There's different reasons, you know, but mainly because it's sustenance when there isn't better sustenance, basically. And that doesn't mean that it isn't better sustenance. It's good sustenance, but it's the kind of thing that happens when you get to the end of the material options available to you. This is when we have these breakthroughs related to our connection to the divine every time. And if you look at people who practice spiritual stuff, like their breakthroughs come if they're doing it right at the end of themselves, when they get to the end of themselves, when they have lost scope or a sense of the answer. You can't, you know, being spiritual and being an authority on all the answers, you know what I mean? Like, you can earn your medal and you can gain mastery, and then your guides will put you in a sort of teaching position. But ultimately, your role is in relationship to the divine as something that holds things with a hand open, that is in a questioning repose, because the process of, like, it's not a process of salvation around getting the right answers. It's a process of deliverance in relationship to seeking and finding. It's not about foreclosed conclusions, and it's the nature of these relationships is not question answered as like a definitive thing. Like, we are connecting with energies that are beyond language, and the ways that they connect with us are through archetypes. I mean, that's kind of how they teach and show us things, how they show us themselves. And every person has a unique take on what that relationship reveals to them. And that's the goal. That's the whole thing. You know, that's why we even do it, is to discover these aspects of selves, you know, there's so much there. So let's take a look, because that ring is almost like a promise that you made when you entered this life. And so to that question of the oracles, the high priestess, these archetypes, the shaman, these genes that call to us from within our own desires and our interests, that lead us to discovering who we are and what our gifts are in, and how we operate through them, and what we embody, and how we bring ourselves to life, and what we want to be seen as, and how we want to participate with that co-creation. And what we channel, what we eat, we largely are, you know. And so, like, our depth is in relationship to the energies that are willing to work with us based on where we're willing to go. And so with the Ace of Swords being about, you know, a point of truth, and the ring being about a promise or a commitment, and that this acorn here, our connection to the divine, our connection to our ancestors, and a promise to reach a point of requiring, you know, this prayer. So let's take a look. See what our guides want to go through. There's a thirst in you. Like, I hear someone's guide say, like, there's a thirst in you. And actually, as I say that, I'm not thirsty. It's a physical mediumship. It's like such a weird thing. Because the sensation will come over me. I like to see it and feel it. There's a thirst in you for wisdom and knowledge and philosophy and understanding. And I want to understand and I want to get it and I want to see it and I want to touch it. You know, you already are a great explorer of the inner space, you know, with this Four of Wands. The ring in the Four of Wands is a very strong correlation, because the Four of Wands is a wedding. It's celebration and it signifies wedding, because the whole archetypal story, you know, the Three of Wands is you're waiting for your prophet to come in after you sent your goods to sea. You're waiting for your wife, I guess, or husband, whatever the heck, ancient times, whatever. You're waiting for your partner to come. And then the Four of Wands is like, they're there. We're having a celebration, the wedding. Like, all of the money is there. All of the party is there. We've arrived. After the wait, you know, comes the celebration. But there's a Tower here. And so I want to see what that is. With the Eight of Cups, walk away. And the Three of Pentacles. Build something new. Three of Swords under that Tower. Knight of Swords under that Eight of Cups. Got a High Priestess on the bottom of the deck here. Some water. There are these moments in time, you know, when we say, like, well, what's the purpose of any of it? Why are we even doing it? Why do we even care? Humanity is like a big mission. You know, we're all part of this human story. We're all part of this human quest. Humanity as a whole, we're part of it. And in an ecosystem, and where there are purposes and what draws us and what we're interested in, like, there's the archetype of the High Priestess. The High Priestess, the commitment that the High Priestess has, the ring, is to this lifestyle. It's to a spiritual quest. It's your primary partnership is with the divine. And we said this in, I think it was like pile number 2, where the Vestal Virgins, before the, you know, patriarchy like ruins things, whatever, but the Vestal Virgins were not abstinent. They weren't like without sex. They just were without a contract, and they didn't belong to a marriage. They didn't belong to a romantic relationship. Their primary partnership, and especially in terms of how they would attain power, they had to have their primary partnership be with the divine, because they held a lot of power and they couldn't give that power away. That magic was with them because they hold an authority over it, and they are in relationship with the divine. And so even like our modern iterations with like nuns and priests of, you marry the divine, you marry God, there is some call here in relationship to that. And so when we ask ourselves, like, you know, well, what are we doing with these tumultuous times? What are the seeds that are planted? Where are we going? What's the whole point? When we ask, like, what is the whole reason for spiritual anything? Why are we even engaging with spirituality? None of these answers seem to, like, you know, equate to something very specific. What's even the point? It is sort of for such a time as this. There have always been prophets, shamans, people in spiritual leadership, and what their purpose was to sort of perfect or engage with the divine in such a way that they would be able to bring through reliable wisdom, reliable insight, reliable foresight, you know, that they made their value known in the practice of whatever they had refined in relationship to the spirituality, the gods, the God. And so the purpose of them, you know, and why we have this type of marriage, you know, to holiness, to this pursuit, you know, this sort of person with this, you know, the people with these very specific savant skills, it's because there are times when all of the structures fail and there is nothing but wasteland and heartbreak. And from these ashes, there is a call to take action on moving in a new direction. And the way that we build that temple is not from a place of it's already built. is from a place of Two of Swords. We don't see how to do this. So that necessitates leadership that comes from people who have answers for the things that there are no answers for. And that doesn't mean that those answers are right or wrong. It means it's a type of sight, a type of moving by way of inspiration, a type of moving by way of divine, like influence. Think about every major breakthrough scientifically. You can Google this. Came from some dream, right? And so when we think about the people who are the visionaries, that inspiration comes from somewhere, and they're able to pick it up, and they're able to ground it, and they're able to bring it into this new direction. And so there's a very real purpose to this role in the ecosystem, this desire that calls you into this kind of relationship. But when there is no structure, when there is a tower, when there's a Three of Swords, this commitment becomes really interesting, because you are moving. It's like that desire, like the math savant can't do something else. And so, you always have to come back to this notion of like, well, why are we going to even have faith? Well, some of us purposed in this way, like, that's all we've been fashioned for that purpose. And we probably would be terrible at math, maybe not, but the Chariot there's movement here. And so when we plan to move forward, the prayer there is about that connection to the divine, developing that relationship, seeing the value in developing that relationship. And for some of you, it's like, well, I don't know who that relationship is. I don't know who they are. It's not, if it's not a major religion with a story that goes along with it, I can't figure it out. I gave the offerings, but then I didn't see the the event. You know what I mean? I didn't have that very specific experience. Like, that is the problem. We find ourselves in with this Two of Swords. There's no cathedral. That the puppeteer, we've been so manipulated by the easy answers, don't pan out. And then we have an indictment, and we have a grave, and we call it all dead. If it was easy to come by, then everyone would have it. And maybe we should, but there's not an infrastructure for that. And, when I say it, there's a tangible way in which, like, the fruit of the Spirit is a good way of putting it. Nine of Pentacles. Nine of Pentacles. That independence is an independence from the structures itself. It's outside the gate of what we understand, of how we make sense of things. Eight of Cups again. Wow. What am I looking at? This is fascinating. Victory, thankfully. So it's good. We want this. We want to move away from what was. What was didn't work, did it? When we put all of our faith into that basket, that didn't really work out, did it? With the Queen of Wands again, this is going to be a warrior queen. Fighting for this position. So I had this thing happen that I'm just going to share with you, because I pop out of the channel a little bit. I've been talking to the guides about how absolutely disgusting, like, I feel like Jesus, remember the scene when Jesus is in the marketplace and he flips all the tables? Because he's just like, what are you buying and selling? Garbage pits? Like, how dare you? Like, duh, So I have that relationship to, like, the marketplace of spiritual anything. And everybody has their sort of spot in the thing that they do. And so it's like, far be it for me to judge. But I've been talking to my guides a lot about, just how people are so jaded and disenchanted. And I really love the people who are jaded and disenchanted. When people come to me for personal readings and they're jaded and disenchanted, I am so grateful, because I know that I'm not, like, I'm dealing with the rate, like, yes, you know what I mean? Like, this is what it is to come to this place of prayer. This is what it is to, like, be in a place of reception, is to sort of feel like nothing worked, And so the Queen of Wands, when I was talking to my guides about, just sort of the place that we find ourselves with in terms of all of the structures are failing, and the archetypes, like, that we've kind of come to understand and make sense of life through, like, aren't really, like, it's not quite, like, doing. And so people are very disenchanted and, like, spirituality, what is it? Why do we do it, right? And so my guides were saying to me, you are the embodiment of what is like, you represent this type of walk, this type of commitment, this type of way of being in the world, and fight for it. Fight for it. Like, you know, if the masquerade, if the carnival is showing a picture of the archetype that is its shadow, that is disgusting, that you don't want to be identified with, well, then fight for what it means to present the light. Fight for what it means to be the living representation of what this should be by way of example. And so there's a call here, you know, with prayer and the high priestess and the tower, like everything is failing. And no matter what archetype you are drawn to, maybe it's the engineer, maybe it's the innovator, maybe it's the visionary. Like, there is a call to fight for what it is that you are bringing forth in the way of that archetype and the value of that archetype and the utility and how it expresses itself. The artist, you know, like there's so many people, oh my God, AI, oh my God, you know, and yes, I get it, but I see something different, you know, in terms of like how this all pans out. The technology has to fail as it is. Good riddance. Absolutely go. But what it is made of, the substance of what was created, what can be created of it, like the value of the tool, if properly administrated, that's all for the future, right? And so when it comes to the engineer who now has to sort of deal with like a culture of like not being able to build anything useful, the engineer has to fight for that, building something useful. The artist has to fight for that position that says, my art is going to be superior in its resonance to the replicators, what the heck, the mimics, whether they're a robot or a person, it doesn't matter. It's still it's a container for a drive, you know. And so the Queen of Wands is somebody who says, like, I'm gonna let this tower fall, but I'm also going to commit to what it means to represent myself in the world and what it is that I've become in relationship to those archetypes, that those gods, those things, you know. And this is a process of discovery. Who is the seer? Well, they had to go into the darkness and they had to feel their way forward, and they were in a dark room and they picked up a dark object and they felt it and it felt like a box, and now they figured out what it is and you can use it. It doesn't come from having the right answers. It comes from being able to engage with the question in a way where what is revealed to you through inspiration becomes an innovation that is now a tool that you can use to break free, right? Break free, because the puppeteer there is sort of the position we find ourselves in, the circumstances that we are born to, the world that we don't feel like we have any control over, the necessity of prayer when there is no better answer, and the way that we are drawn to the archetypes that we embody. With that Nine of Pentacles right under the wedding with the Chariot, like, you are being brought to there's a foundation for you that you are developing outside the gate of what was, that you are developing independent of the stories that you've been given. And when you walk away from the tower or the story that doesn't hold, and you're able to take that heartbreak and realize that there is nothing worth investing in sitting with it and keeping it, you know, you have to walk away from the heartbreak and the thing that didn't work and the foundation that wouldn't hold. That's what that Eight of Cups is. There's emotional investment in what that foundation was going to be, and we're heartbroken about it. And so we, you know, to keep that emotional investment, we stay heartbroken. We don't want to leave the foundation that we built. We don't want to leave the idea of what we thought it was supposed to be. And so in order to continue to stay with that thing that we invested in, that we loved, we stay in the heartbreak. But when we're willing to pick our heads up and say, I don't want to be heartbroken anymore. I'm not going to keep looking at this runes. I'm going to move in a new direction. And when you move in that direction, because we've got Eight of Cups, Eight of Cups. When you take action on moving in that new direction, that foundation wasn't going to hold. What I have developed, you know, outside of the structures that were given to me, I'm going to take that and I'm going to move in a new direction, and I'm going to have victory as I move away from the old way of doing things, the old way of thinking about things, the old way of explaining things. I'm going to, Queen of Wands, fight for this position, you know, and that, this is everybody. You're committed to this. You know what I mean? This is as a walk. This is a lifestyle. You know, I'm going to fight for a lifestyle. In the face of all that wasn't true, I'm going to fight for what is. I'm going to embody what is, and that's where the victory is. But you're walking away from ways of doing things, ways of being understood, ways of being seen, ways of holding yourself in front of others so that they can have some way of understanding you. And you're going to leave that behind. You're going to leave behind the disappointments. being married to the divine almost, in a relationship of prayer with that which you are developed. Like, this is hard for people. And the reason it's hard for people is, as you say, being in a relationship with the divine, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's like the best thing in the entire world. And they're like, who's the divine? That's a really big thing right there. Who, tell me who God is. Like, I sit here week after week and I bear witness to the lived experience of my relationships with the gods, with the divine. Every scripture ever written is an eyewitness account of someone's relationship with the divine. And what it is to bear that, you bear witness because then it's real. You know what I mean? Like, it's real for me, bear witness. But for each and every one of you, there is a call to bear a witness to the relationship that you have with the divine in your own life. And what does that look like? Well, relationships don't immediately happen. And again, a relationship with the divine is not an event. It's not an event of salvation. It's a process of discovery. It's seeds that you plant and then they start to grow and you witness that growth. Because you plant the seed, you don't know what's going to grow. You say the prayer, you don't understand what that's going to bring in. And sometimes we have these expectations. Like, I was working with, Hecate, and I put an offering out and it just didn't feel right. Well, that's the thing with the gods. It's a process of discovery. If it doesn't feel right, that's like, I'm not ready for you. You're not ready for this. Like, what does feel right? What is the baby step in the right direction? What is in alignment with the ancestral gods that your genes are developed to, all of us have different genes and different traditions, and some things aren't going to resonate with you because there isn't a rich development of that, religious persuasion or spiritual persuasion. I have to explain this very carefully because I see this so clearly and I think it's easy to miss. Ecosystem is related to habitat, and habitat is related to groups that are particularly purposed in relationship to the environment that they're in. And so the god that a desert population serves and the religion that is built around their experience of divine intervention has a lot to do with the fact that the desert is harsh. And so there tend to be gods that are war gods, that come of those environments. And not everyone comes from those environments. So when somebody presents you with a war god and you're like, for some reason, I just feel like nature is real and that is not. I was talking to someone who had this exact experience, and I think this is so common, so I'm bringing it through and I hope that's okay. But this notion of what you identify with as God is going to be particular to the traditions that have developed in the genes that recognize God and the experiences that spark those genes. When we practice prayer, we're going to have an experience of prayer that is ignited by something that we've inherited in the way of experience after experience after experience after experience of prayer. And sometimes that prayer is a walk outside, And so with this Gemini being about communicating, and Leo is a spotlight, universal harmony is a song that you sing, unity is kind of a place in the world for you, a unity with your purpose, a unity with your story, a unity with, there's compensation here. Let me just see. You guys want you to begin to think about unity in a new way. Because prayer is the bottom of the deck here. We have the ring here, which is a level of commitment. This is a, I just see druids, the druids when I pick this up. That unity is, again, it's like a unity with yourself. I understand that what we're facing in the way of a world, right now, there isn't good compensation for what we have to offer. The structures of extraction are not sustainable. They're cruel, they're cannibalistic, and they're insane. People are not running things, they're running things into the ground, and it's obvious that the tower is falling. And I think that we have to start thinking about this tower that is falling as the opportunity that it is, the blessing that it is. That doesn't mean accepting the casualties that are being, in front of our faces. It's not accepting those casualties, but it is accepting that what is cannot continue. What is being destroyed needs to be destroyed. Walking away from the past and everything that the past might have promised and into a place of we've got to build this, we have to do something new. We have to take action on not investing in any of the things that we had all of these emotional investments in. And that's a decision that we make, not because we feel punished, but because we think that there's an opportunity in what this wedding and what this commitment to the spiritual journey ends up being. Spiritual journey is eternal. And we just have the experience of the material world for a while. And so when we sort of like unify with this sense of ourselves as eternal, when we unify with our sense of embodying an archetype and fighting for an archetype of connection with the divine that isn't the circus, when we make that choice, right now it means walking away from everything that we know as spiritual, like represented. What do we know as spiritual? And what is represented in the way that it used to be? Someone high atop the thing, you know what I mean? Writes a book, and all those and now we have a doctrine of what is true, and anybody who doesn't believe in it is false, and we are right and they are wrong, and this is right. This is our God, and we're going to prove it, and this is how we figure it out. We're walking away from that. Where does that leave us? Well, with the Nine of Pentacles, it means we have to create a faith on our own with nothing but the inner compass and the faculty of prayer and the technologies of faith that work outside of the story structures so that we can come to a place of conviction about what truly is. So we can come to a place of clarity with the Leo card here of what truly is. And that victory comes in taking action that says, okay, well, maybe those things didn't work for a reason. Maybe I need a new experience or a new perception on what this process of engaging with divine energies ends up being. Maybe it's not about chosen ones, and maybe it's about a lot more than that. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that comes into this. And so when you fight for, this thing that you love, it's about liberating yourself from the sticky fingerprints of like what people say it should be. The law of compensation says you will be compensated. It's like weird. I'm like, really? Yeah, let's just see. The law of compensation on the bottom of the deck says you will be compensated for whatever this, journey ends up being. It's a storm. It's developing. I see the blind seer. It's being able to see through the blindness. Walking away from everything that we know about what a spiritual person, what a spiritual thing is, means being willing to discover something new. And there's victory in that. Because what was obviously not working. And what we've come to rely on in the scintilla of what is available, outside of organized religion, again, it's so deeply impacted by the problems of organized religion and that structure that kind of seeps into everything. We really do have to sort of like let that stuff go because pleasure comes into it. But the Gemini there being about communicating, I love this actually. So the prayer is something that, that's a partnership with the divine forces that inspire you. The Three of Pentacles is about building a temple. How are we building this temple? With a blindfold on. We can't see how to do it. We don't know how to do it. We don't remember. The memories are like deep within there in that inner world, locked in with those ancestral practices that we can only develop through what? Play. That we can only develop through play. They're not going to be given to us in a book. We're not going to find the answers in some dogma or another. Our ancestors came to an understanding of the gods that informed them and inspired them and brought them out of the darkness of whatever they couldn't figure out. Maybe it was a dark winter. Maybe it was a storm. Maybe it was a sickness. But they allowed themselves to pray. They entertained the possibility that there was a listener. And maybe there wasn't some conviction or belief because you assign on the dotted line of that dogma. Maybe there is just a willingness to play, to enter the question. and to allow what to be revealed and what is revealed to be something that you begin to communicate with the Gemini card here. So that fighting for this is not necessarily just a miserable experience of being disappointed about what it's not. What it's not is information that helps you figure out what it is. And so that Emperor is like, taking dominion and taking control is not about some sort of like tyrannical certainty about right and wrong, and it's not even an event. It's not even an arrival. It's a process of discovery that you communicate. And you do so with integrity, and you do so in relationship to the divine. You are not appointing yourself a king or an expert, because that's a position of status. And that's not really what this process of discovery ends up being. A process of discovery is not about status. It's not about finding, there is a law of compensation that says what you put out there, you will, what seeds you sow, you will reap. There's some truth to that, because nature says we put the thing in the ground and then we get the plant. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we can count on that's a good law. So the seeds you plant, you're going to get the plant that you're going to get the garden that you create. And so when we communicate, this is a taking action kind of a thing. It's not a passive prayer. It's experiencing, and through that experience, connecting with the divine and bringing the divine inspiration through our, how do we find who's our God? What do they look like? We'll make a picture. Work with that. Because the nature of the gods is they're these forces of nature. They're beyond language. They're the archetypes themselves. And then the kaleidoscope of archetypes that is created from those archetypes. The forms that inform our forms. Like, this is a pre-language, post-language kind of a thing. This is a dance. The stories facilitate our belief, but they don't contain it. And when we create a container of belief that we can trust, it's because there's something about the information that comes through to us through that pure pursuit of prayer, where we bring ourselves to the gods or our ancestors as our inner children. And what comes of that play and that openness and allowing the question to be answered in that space of not being determined, not exchanged, not where's the right or wrong, is it evil, is it good? Now we're playing games with our shadows. But the purity here and the flexibility and the thriving, that comes from communicating this process. It's funny, like sometimes these messages will come through in like 7 different ways. Like this message came through a conversation this week. It came through something, so I think it's really important with this 2 of Cups that you understand that, like, the divine feminine aspect of God is in conversation. It's in the word. It's we. It's not I. And so communicating the divine, it's creativity, and it's a creative thing that we do. It's in the spirit of play, because we're holding it with our hand open, and we come to our gods as our inner children with our needs, and from that place of purity, we communicate what we find. And sometimes what we find is I expected this and it wasn't that. Okay, we start there and we sketch our way out. I wanted to feel this and I felt that. This scared me. Okay, well, what is the relationship between there's so much substance to continuing to ask the right questions, not feeling foreclosed. Pile number 2 is foreclosed. The ring is a commitment. I know that I love this stuff. I've always loved this stuff. I know that I can't, ignore that this is something that calls to me, that I can't turn off. There's something about this archetype that I just like, there's something there. There's a commitment, there's a prayer, there's a reason, and it's not all of those other things. The victory is what is being created of this space of independence from those other things. And it almost feels like a non-answer, but it's not. It's not. Like right there. The energy of play. The energy of pleasure. The 6 of Wands victory, taking action and walking away from all of the other stuff and stepping into this new exploration. That's how this relationship in prayer, in play, and the commitment to coming back again over and over and over again. Not from a place of certainty. Again, look at that 2 of Swords. But communicating that mystery, flourishing meadow, you're planting seeds. I want to know the answer to this question. I'm going to seek in prayer, bring with my inner child the desire to understand, operate from that need of requiring some interplay of information to take place. Like the chain of destiny. I watch my thoughts because they become my emotions. I watch my emotions because they become my words. I watch my words because they become my actions. I watch my actions because they become my character. I watch my character because it becomes my destiny. The utility of a divine spiritual walk is this chain of events in the spirit of play. Not trying to have the right answer. Not needing the answer to be right, otherwise the evil boogeyman is going to get you. That's the shadow in and of itself. Some sort of conviction that you did something wrong and now you deserve to be afraid. Because you were playing. Now we know that there's a shadow who lurks and waits for you to play. And why is it there? Well, somebody told you that play was evil. And now you believe it. And so when we encounter these things, we begin to untangle the power that these stories that come from our unconscious spaces have over us. Playing is not evil. I was just playing. All right, well, why do I feel that way? Why is my shadow giving me this information? What does it come from? Connecting to those guides that help us unlock these doors. And so that once you name that shadow doesn't have power over you. And so this is a process, this is a relationship, and this is a commitment, not to what doesn't work, but to finding what does. Maybe the church disappointed you. Well, there's no God. Or the church disappointed you, and you're going to find what your experience of God ends up being, and you're going to translate that experience into something of meaning that you bring into the world as a gift, because you're called into that, because it's somehow, that's what's here, right? And so that law of compensation says that you will be compensated. Be flexible about what thriving looks like over the next couple of years. Again, I have been having these themes come up in personal readings because everybody's sort of people are doing the same things. We're in the same world. We're going through the same stuff. But one of the things that keeps on coming up is thriving during this liminal space looks very different than thriving during winter, for our ancestors looked very different from thriving in the spring. And so when you think about your success or failure rate, or whether or not you're doing great, think about the season that you're in and ask yourself if you are thriving in relationship to the season that you are in. And if the answer is, well, considering all the stuff, yeah, I'm doing okay, well, then you pat yourself on the back. That's part of what it means to flourish right now at the bottom of the deck in terms of that inner garden. Yes, we are under attack. Yes, there's a lot of change. But that inner space that you are responsible for, you have to work with what it means to encounter these toxic thoughts. Ask yourself what you are integrating into your belief about yourself and your own powerlessness or lack thereof. And understand when that landscape looks a certain way and when you're tasked to survive, that the steps that you take to cultivate a life of prayer, because maybe that's just what you have to do, is in part, taking dominion over those toxic thoughts, taking dominion over those suggestions that you're doomed or that there is not hope. Because that energy of play is a necessary alchemy for the energy of creativity, for being able to receive innovation and have that visionary quality that is going to be required when there is no other structure. When there's no structure, when the tower is down, we need a vision of the house we're going to build. And we can't have a vision of that house we're going to build if we're just crying over the fallen tower. Again, that's this Three of Swords. So we're called to pick our heads up when it comes to spirituality in particular, because all those things fell apart. And even the carnival of what was on offer, and this is what a psychic is, this is what a message sounds like, that's still influenced so much by the old structures. And what is becoming available in relationship to our relationships with prayer and the gods are examples that we can turn to eyewitness accounts of a different way of being, and you're invited to participate in that different way of being, your true self. And so pile number 3, that is your message. I hope that was helpful. And we are going to be doing a live on current events in my Patreon next week. And those of you who are here in Patreon, I do encourage you to write questions down. I want the hard questions. How are we going to, what's going to happen in the economy? How are we going to survive it? Like, what are we going to do if there's martial law that's declared? Like, ask me political questions. Go for it. I want the hard stuff. Put it this way. The quality of a tarot reading, and especially if you are a tarot reader and you read the cards, first of all, the cards are about confirmation more than anything else in my mind. You kind of start with the prayer, and that prayer is what drives the channeling. And then the confirmations come in along the line, like they help you storytell because they bring in it's pretty just interactive prayer. But the quality of a reading is dependent on the questions. So get some good questions. The readings that you're doing for yourself, make sure that those questions are quality questions, that they're not questions of like gossip, they're not questions of like vengeance. Get yourself some quality questions. And when it comes to this live reading on current events, I want you to all think about really quality questions, because that's going to determine the quality of the reading. I'll try to bring some quality questions too, so that it's good no matter what. But let's make sure that we've got quality questions, and think about what you really want to know and need to know in terms of what we're looking at right now. And so with that, I'm going to close this reading, and I hope and wish you all the best at this time, and I will see you again soon.